Hello everyone, if there's anyone there, welcome to this one-off Google Plus Hangout with Bill Boorman. Bill Boorman's joining us today to talk about the new model agency, which is a white paper he put together for Colleague Software. I'm Louis Welcome from Colleague Software. I'm also joined by Pete Thompson from PSD Group, the head of IT there. We launched the paper last week at Recruitment Leaders Connect by the job post. Had a fantastic response, put it on the internet on Monday, I think, Bill, on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and we've had 3,000 views, hundreds of shares, and a lot of recruitment agency leaders and directors downloading it and having a look at it. I wanted to just do a quick discussion with Bill as a follow-up to see if anyone was interested. I'm getting a bit of feedback here. 1 second, sorry about that. Yeah, I wanted to bring Bill on and anyone else that was interested to get some feedback from people and just have a video on YouTube after to give people a taste of what the white paper is all about. Bill, do you want to start by just giving a sort of summary for those who haven't read it yet?
I will do, Louis, but I don't know about anyone else. But I'm getting a double sound
You're
on that.
it's probably playing back on one of your other browser windows.
Right, got it. Are we still in? Are we still in?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Okay. What it is, Louis? Yeah, thanks for that. I've been thinking over the last really 3 or 4 years the ways in which agencies might need to change or change the way things are going. I think the biggest thing that's prompted me really right now to publish the paper at this point is that I think we're in a bit of a false dawn in that most recruitment companies are doing better than they have done perhaps for 3 or 4 years, which seems like a crazy time to be thinking about changing. There's a lot of patting on the back at the moment at celebration over business levels, revenue levels, and so on. But my view is this is actually reflecting the rising market. Right now, rather of a market that's rising, rather than perhaps rather than maybe a market that's where there is plenty of opportunity available. So I think if we looked overall at the market, what's really clear is the volume of business that's available to fill is definitely shrinking. And I think this is true on both the contractor side and on the perm business side. So I think it's time to start looking at the model and saying, well, is the way in which most agencies and recruiters operate as a business model relevant, and relevant for the current market, and relevant when we look outside of the recruitment bubble and start looking at the ways every other type of business is conducting business. I think the other key point or the other key driver of change really is the candidate aspect, in that it used to be essential for candidates to actually register with agencies. That used to be the route to business. I don't think it is anymore. I, so and I think that's something that's becoming quite clear, that once we get into actually looking at the way in which candidates are working, the way in which candidates are looking for jobs. Probably the other big factor is connectivity. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people couldn't connect in the way that they could. Data needed to be given. So if I wanted information from you to find out about your background or your history, you had to give me a CV. You had to provide me with information, and you don't need to do that anymore. It's very easy. If we look at the hiring patterns, obviously, I spent quite a lot of my time with corporate hires and tracking companies. The average hire has been attached with the company for 7 months. It's not a before they become an applicant. So it's also not a people don't look for jobs in the same way as they did. I think if we look historically, the way in which people look for jobs, it was almost like blind dating. You got an introduction to somebody, you went along, you got an introduction to a company, you went along for the first time, you began to find out a little bit about them during the process. That's really when the relationship was built. What we're seeing now is actually that's not the case. The relationship has been firmly built as what I would call a candidate before a candidate decides to become an applicant. So I think you've got to look at it and say, well, if and there's always a lot of huffing and puffing about how great different companies are and how one company is better than all their competitors and all the rest of it. I think when we get into it, the majority of agencies are really providing an introductory service, a CV sending service, there is a little bit of matching, but generally it's we're going to provide you with some CVs and see what happens. And there's not a massive emphasis on the consultancy side. Does that make sense, Louis, or is there anything else you want to ask on that?
Yeah, it does. So essentially, you think this economic rebound, the fact recruitment agencies are still doing very, very well, isn't reflective of what is a shrinking market?
I don't think they necessarily are doing well. I think they're doing better than they were, or better than they have been for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think, first of all, that's a cause for, in a lot of cases, that's a cause for celebration. But I think if we look at the market as a whole,
oh, we've lost Bill there. Pete, do you want to fill the gap in there? And what Bill was just saying about the changes that are happening, whether you agree with him, whether it is agencies do need to be concerned?
I think I personally do agree with him. I think it is very early in this growth phase, and we're pretty wary as a business as to how long this may last and whether it's going to continue. But we do see. I mean, there's a lot more work out there, which is fantastic. However, I think the hiring cycles are still as long as they have been over the last couple of years. I don't see any change in that, and I think our clients are still in this cost-saving mode. I don't see that changing for a long, long time, and they're still trying to drive down costs and they're very cautious in their approach to recruitment, and it's getting way more difficult to get in touch with these people directly. So relationships are key now. You really got to make the most of what you've got in the marketplace, existing relationships, and trying to build on those relationships to get referrals to get further business.
Okay, thank you. Bill, are you back? It's technology for you. I can see his face there.
He's not come up on mine.
Yeah, we are here, Bill. Okay, well, I'll just do a refresher for those that are watching. If you want to ask any questions, if we can get Bill back, you can use the Google Plus Q&A app, and you can tweet me at colleagueRS. Pete, until Bill comes back, I'll carry on with yourself.
Right.
What are recruitment agencies doing now to change, do you think? What are you seeing a lot of change in the models, or are things carrying on much the same? Not necessarily PSD, but I mean in general.
I'd love to say we are making massive changes to accommodate what's going to happen in the future, but we don't have a crystal ball, I'm afraid, and like a lot of the larger agencies, I suppose we are slower to change, just because of the way we're structured and our kind of work in the industry. I think the old model is still going to continue for a fair period of time. I don't see it breaking down in the near future, but we continue to be squeezed on all sides. I think our focus is now more around what we can market to the client, as Bill says in his white paper. We've moved away from, I think we're moving away, hopefully, from selling candidates and services to identifying more about what the client really needs and what their requirements are, and trying to fulfill that and market to them better rather than sell them. inventory that we have on our books.
Okay, and what role is social media playing in this change? You feel that is being taken advantage of probably in recruitment?
I think there are some. There's a small pocket of recruitment companies doing it well, but I don't see a large increase in what's happening in social media. I think from the candidate point of view, I think they are moving more and more towards that recruitment model. I think they're very happy hanging out in social media and using that for identifying opportunities, getting referrals, identifying companies they want to work for and are happy to provide their CVs for. So I see that increasing fairly rapidly. And it's something we're constantly chasing as to how to get to grips with that and to make it a model that's going to work for us and our clients and the candidates. It's not an easy one to get your head around for a company of our size and the focus we have across the various industries.
Yeah. I suppose I suppose for in terms of the changes Bill is talking about, it's the smaller agencies that are going to be able to adapt quicker.
Yeah,
Bill,
more agile and flexible.
Yeah. I mean, we're only 20 users at Colleague and things. Bill, have we got you back?
Yeah, I'm back in, so I'm hoping you can see me now.
Pete's been holding the fort admirably. I'll come back to yourself, Bill. We're just talking about some of the changes that we are seeing in recruitment agencies and some of the things that recruitment agencies could be doing to add extra value. You talk about in the white paper about RPOs, data mapping, mobility, those kind of things. Are you seeing these changes, or are these things you're just making suggestions?
No, well, I've taken them from individual companies, but it is individual companies doing it rather than any kind of wholesale movement at the moment. But I think if we look at them, so if I gave you some examples, we spoke about the job post being an agency and client brokerage in terms of jobs, bringing kind of mass recruitment together and enabling a client to use one service through an online portal. That came from an agency. We talk about people like TalentWorks, who created talent mapping. There is who have a global business, 6 offices around the world doing talent mapping. So doing that first stage, I've been looking at a company in New York who are paid $25 per interview and are paid for making introductions. There's businesses like Recruiter Loop who are renting out, who are effectively giving out, effectively renting out recruiters by the hour and charging an hourly charge. Yesterday, again at Talent Leaders Connect, looked at a new business called Omnio, which has been founded by a couple of people who used to be in the REC, who are looking at things like, and they're providing a full applicant attraction service, but not a placement service, and doing it for £750 a month, and kind of managing that middle ground. We've seen a rise of the recruitment portals for high volume, low fee business, your Recruitment Genie and people like that. So I think we're seeing more and more different models, more and more different ways of doing recruiting, and actually sitting back and thinking, well, how can we provide value to, if we forget things, let's forget talking about customers and candidates first of all, because I think whether you use the terms customers and candidates, you're automatically setting things up as a sales relationship. You're creating something that's a little bit gladiatorial, in which everyone's role is defined. Let's say let's consider it as a community. So it's a community in which all of your stakeholders are involved, whether that's people looking for jobs, people who are just in the same marketplace, people who are hiring. And we consider all those parts being equal. Once you get to know your community and your network and your contacts, what that network needs becomes obvious. And it's going to be lots of different things. I think you know from True London and True Amsterdam and other events, Rob Van Elberg is a good example with his business Rave Recruitment. And Rave Recruitment used to be a traditional contract agency. They now actually go out and pitch and take on work. They take on coding work. They get paid for the outcome of that work, and they use their real skills and their database of contacts that have been accumulated over the years to provide work. Peter Cosgrove at CPL, the biggest growing part of CPL is what they're calling shared sourcing, which is for things like contact and contract centres across Eastern Europe, where they're generating revenue on the output of the contract centre. So they're being paid for that, but using their staffing expertise to staff it. So I think we're seeing lots of pockets of people who are proving that you can run a business doing something different.
There's a couple I could mention, Bill. They're not customers, but I came across Acre at a Recruitment International event last week on culture and employer branding, talking about what you were talking about with using data mapping and so forth to provide extra value to their clients. To use that data to provide intelligence and to provide a map of the industry. And the one I mentioned to you and Peter at the Job Post event last week, the Curve Group, who I've been asking Lindsay at the Curve Group to come on and hang out for a long while, and I'll carry on trying to get her on sometime to talk about not having no commission, which they do that, and not hiring recruiters at a recruitment agency, which is an interesting idea. They hire people in the niche they recruit for. So
I saw something quite interesting when we talk about those types of businesses. There's a company called Oasis HR. Actually, used to be a rec-to-rec business, so we're a very traditional, you'd say, quite cutthroat, maybe. Sounds a bit of a derogatory term, but quite an aggressive sales-orientated business in the recruitment market, as you can imagine. They moved during the down times. They moved into the HR market. They started putting on roundtables, so they hold about 20-25 people events in all kinds of different areas of HR, usually on client premises or lawyers' premises. So it might be payroll, it might be benefits, it might be learning and development. They hold round tables in all the niches up and down the country and provide some white papers. All of their business comes from the contacts they make in the round tables, and all of their candidates come from either referrals back via the round table, but everything can be traced back to the round table. And I know when I was speaking with Oasis at an event, one of the things that they said is, right, their biggest challenge, their hardest thing is hiring recruiters who they don't want salespeople. They don't want people who pick up the phone. They don't want people who bash out the numbers and bash out the volumes. They want people who can, and they're finding it incredibly hard to find recruiters with any level of experience who are able to work in kind of this networking market of not feeling you've got to go in a room and pitch everyone straight away to be a candidate or a client, but create a presence by your knowledge and by your contribution to the point where people want to do business with you. I think this is a world change in terms of how people are. This isn't an exclusive recruitment conversation. We're just perhaps having the conversation 3, 4, 5 years after other businesses have, like retail and so on. And we've seen what's happened in those businesses. You know, the total consumerization of everything, when the consumers are getting more and more power, and you're getting much more of a community about the way people do business. I think the world we're in now can best be summed up by the statement that everybody wants to buy, nobody wants to be sold to. So the traditional model of you know, I've taught it and trained it over the years to picking up the phone and saying, got a great candidate, want to talk to you about them, expecting to be able to get people on the phone, ringing candidates to say, yeah, I've got a great job for you, doing all that kind of number crunching, phone jockeying, both kind of from a candidate point of view and from a client point of view. That's just not the way people want to do business now. They want to do business with people they know. They want to do business with people they respect, and they will all, because of connectivity, the way in which people are connected, they will already have at the point when business opportunities arise, whichever direction that is, whether that's as a candidate looking for a job or a client looking to hire, they've already got their short list of 4 or 5 people who they would want to do business with. And if they don't have that short list of 4 or 5 people, they're going to reach out to their connections and say, who do you know, who do you use, who do you work with, and business is going to come by referral recommendation. So the very way in which we do business in the recruitment sector needs to change in the way that lots of other businesses and industries have. This is, I think, when we talk about things like having a CRM to maintain contacts, moving from transactions to relationships, adding value by putting good content into the market that people value. This isn't a recruitment thing. This is kind of
this is an example of what colleague are doing this webinar now. So, and the white paper indeed. So.
Yeah, and all that kind of thing. It's being in the market, having a presence. Nobody wants to read a brochure. Really, what do you do with a brochure? You pick up a brochure and throw it down. Nobody wants to walk out of a conference with a stress ball. How many stress balls? How many stress balls do you actually need? What people are valuing is content and something of interest. And I think the other difference we've got now is really doing business used to be chance encounters. It used to be the fact that somebody rang you just at the right time, or even if you went to an event. Let's say you go to Talent Leaders Connect, and and you might be on your booth giving out your brochures and colleague stress balls or plasticine or whatever it is, and people will come along. Probably the people who you came across at that event, you're going to get a business card which you're going to put in your bottom drawer. They're going to get a phone call once every 6 or 7 weeks, but it was only the very occasional one where you would maintain any level of relationship. Now, first thing people are doing, we're connecting on LinkedIn, we're sharing white papers with people, sharing content with people, and I think when we're talking about that, that's what the recruitment business needs to become. Recruitment businesses need to become inbound marketing. There need to be data centers over understanding everybody that they have, whether that's candidates or clients.
Could you talk a bit more about the data side and what recruiters could be doing with their data? And perhaps Pete would have a bit of input on this as well. But Bill, if you were talking about some interesting things in the white paper around data and talent mapping.
Yeah, so let's think about what every recruitment business has right now. So if we said, where's the starting point today? Let's take a look at it. The first thing I'd point out is if you've been in business 10 years, you've got 10 years worth of data. You've got 10 years worth of CVs, 10 years worth of candidate records, 10 years of client conversations, 10 years of accumulated knowledge, which can be, let's talk on a base level and talk about just a CV. And let's forget about a CV as whose only purpose is as an introductory document to try and get someone a job or an interview, right? And let's think about what a CV tells us. It will give us a list of employers. It will match skills with employers. It gives us an indication of the types of people that they've historically employed. It gives us personal detail about things like education, so we can link an education with a university, with a course. It gives us things like shows us dates and a career path of a person, and if we take that as one person and we combine 100, similar people, we might say, well, actually there's a trend or a pattern in there. The average time someone spends in this job is 2 years. This is the types of skills they've got. This is what a data analyst looks like within IBM. This is what a data analyst looks like within Oracle. We can begin to get some real market intelligence from that, as long as we see beyond the CV. We see beyond the CV. And I think that's what we've got to start doing, is saying, right, okay, let's collect data. What can data tell us? If I've been hiring in a niche sector of the market, and I've been doing that for 5 years or 10 years, I've been building, I've got all this intelligence that says, this is the average salary level. This is the average salary level with this experience. This is the average salary level with that experience. This is the type of education. These are the companies where these people would have got their experience. I can start to become very, very tactical about what I'm doing, and I can begin to sell other things like market mapping, business reports, intelligence. So there was a firm, and I can't remember their name. Peter might remember them, but there was a business in Cardiff that used to sell a service which would scrape career sites and pass jobs to recruitment companies as leads. Whenever a job came up on a career site, come back and say, oh, this company in this area is looking for this, creating the opportunity to pick the phone up and sell in the traditional sales operation. What they've discovered is actually that had a very limited value over people who were looking to pay for that, and in reality people could do it themselves, but they would pay for the other people would pay for the market intelligence that said, collectively off all the career sites, this is the area with the most jobs, these are the types of skills, these are the salary levels, and people would pay for a breakdown of the market information in a digestible way. So in a way that said, okay, think about it. If you're in a recruitment company and a client says to you, right, okay, we're going to be, I don't know, we're going to be hiring a team of 20 developers. We're going to have a beauty parade. I used to be in them, believe it or not. We're going to have a beauty parade. I'm going to invite 6 suppliers in. What's generally going to happen is each supplier is going to turn up and really you know, choose me. It's kind of like it's called a beauty parade because it is like that. I want to travel the world, help children, and be a great recruitment company. You know, it really is that going in, and very, very difficult. Ultimately the buyers are looking at it and saying it's a toss of a coin, or it's which one of these suppliers did I dislike the least as to who I'm going to give my business to. Whereas I think if you could go in there and say, right, okay, this is what you want to do, this is what the market looks like. Look at things like data maps. Martin Lee, who you probably know, the source of Martin Lee's becoming, I remember when I first met him from True London, he was representing a company called Zoomed, who did data mapping, but it was 4 years ago and the market wasn't really ready. But they had some fantastic products which enabled you to overlay data with Google Maps. They actually moved out of the recruitment business and started doing things like working for the police to recognise crime hotspots based on statistics and data. So imagine that you could go and see a client and say, okay, you want to hire, this is what the market looks like right now. These are the types of candidates. These are the skills, but these are the people who are based around you. If you were to change that, salary level from 50,000 to 55,000, this is what would be available to you now. Suddenly you're using data to present and be a consultant. The other thing is, I think when we look at belonging to actually, when we start looking at different markets of saying, going in and saying, right, how do people add value? What can we offer? If we join a community, if you're in a LinkedIn group as a recruiter, say, if you're on a Facebook page, if you're connected with people, how can you add value to those professionals? What is the thing you can offer your expert opinion on as an expert opinion rather than as a sales pitch? expert opinion, what can I offer? I know that if I go to groups and start giving intelligent information around salary levels, job opportunities, not jobs, but these are the types of markets, these are the skill gaps, this is the average length of tenure, this is how long people use it. I can begin to create very accurate data-based information, all kinds of things, from average lengths of hire, source of hire. I can start adding value from a recruiting expert point of view into the groups that I'm in to produce content that things that people want to read, market reports, all kinds of things, by, whatever it is, by using data to say people want to read that, and then ultimately they want to come back and they will want to come back and talk to me.
So, but are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, still here. So yeah, that all sounds fantastic. I don't think anyone could argue these would all be fantastic things. Pete, do you have any comments on that? Is there what's stopping recruiters from doing this then?
There'll be a number of things. I think because it's not sales anymore, and it's getting into managing data and analyzing data. And it's becoming more of a market-focused approach. I think that's where a lot of recruiters will struggle to get to grips with it and not understand how they're going to get started in this. And I think they see it as a massive, massive change to the way they already do things. So,
in a time when they are still making money, as Bill said. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of attitude.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, they won't want to spend any more time on anything other than doing the selling, because that's all going well right now. I think one of the things I've understood over the last year, we've done some work with Mike Fishwick on some events. He's done some massive big data implementations. And one of the things I've come to understand is this analysis of the data can actually be done very, very quickly in a fairly short period of time. Within 6 to 12 months, you can get a good amount of meaningful data that you can get in. You can package it up in a way that it looks very appealing to various customers across the different markets. As data that they can actually use and will be willing to pay for. And a lot of that can be done through the cloud infrastructure that's available right now. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get this kind of information out of what you've already got.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, Peter. The data's already there.
Yeah.
We're not having to go and scrape and collect it. What we're trying to do is get people to open their minds and reframe what it is they do, even to the point where, and lots of people are going to say this is a crazy idea, but we've been looking at it and saying if we talked about recruitment as a data business and as a data service, you could provide the recruiting bit free.
Yep.
Because it would bring enough people into the ecosystem to give you value, that you wouldn't actually need to charge placement fees anymore.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
Yeah, I can hear rattling teacups in boardrooms up down the country going, what's Boorman said now?
Well, I think we've got another 15 or so minutes. I just want to do a quick catch up. If anyone, I think we've got about 10 viewers we've had, which is good. You guys, if you're on Twitter @colleagueRS, if you have a question, or if you're watching via Google Plus, please use the Q&A app. And sending your comments, sending your criticism, sending your positive or negative feedback, sending your questions. We welcome them and we'll answer them. Bill, next part to move on to, I think, would be, can you talk a little bit more about the effect of employer branding and the importance of that to corporations and companies, and your suggestion that agencies in the white paper should be becoming more like RPOs?
Yeah, I think so. So what I'm seeing there's a number of reasons why people stop using agencies, right, or have stopped using agencies and moved into direct sourcing. Now, the obvious one that everyone will jump on straight away is say it's a cost-saving exercise. It's much easier to spend £250,000 on having your own direct sourcing recruiting team than it is to spend £2 million on agency fees or whatever's being spent. And we're seeing that, and that's where the market shrinkage is coming from. But actually, the reducing the cost of hire is only a small part of it. The other trends that are coming in is saying, if you remember right at the beginning of the call, one of the things I talked about is the way in which is the change in face of kind of talent attraction, and the fact that candidates and applicants are two different things. A candidate is someone who's chosen to be attached to a company for a period of time, usually a minimum of 7 months. An applicant is someone who's being measured against a job. And agencies, for the most part, provide applicants, not candidates, because it's people being provided and introduced on a very transactional basis. So once we start thinking about that and saying what a company's trying to do, it's shifting away. We had a debate at iRecruit. I had a debate with Felix Wetzel, which Mervyn Dillon has detailed very well on the Broadbean blog. If anyone wants to go and have a look at it, and it's that changing face of saying actually organisations are attracting candidates and people to the company to get them into the ecosystem so they can start building relationships, talent pool, know who they can reach out from a talent network, and increasing that's the way organisations are moving themselves. So I think we're at that point of saying, well, that's really, if that's what we're doing, companies aren't looking for applicants anymore. They're looking for candidates, and yet agencies are introducing candidates. And what's attracting people to become candidates is the employer branding piece. Is all the things you might be doing on Facebook, LinkedIn, combining LinkedIn profiles, and so on. It's back to this real challenge of connectivity. So you can either fight that, because what companies are saying is two things. Number one is it's our story, we need to tell it. From a candidate point of view, they're saying if I want to find out what it's like to be a Java programmer at Oracle, I want to talk to a Java programmer at Oracle. I don't want to talk to a recruiter. I don't want to talk to a recruiter till I'm ready to be an applicant. So I want to come into your ecosystem, look at your career site, do any of that stuff, but I don't want to put my hand up. I don't want to be measured against a job. I don't want to be in that kind of project pipeline. So we look at it and say, well, are we even offering these days what companies want? Because what are you doing? You send an applicant down for an interview. They get measured against that job. If they're not successful, they come back into your ecosystem. There's nothing about maintaining a relationship with the company. Actually, could we do things like attract candidates instead of applicants? Could we use our market information to know what employer branding should be by knowing what's attractive, what candidates are looking for, what's attractive from one company to another? Could we provide the service? Could we provide more? And why I think every company should look like an RPO, that's when you're going beyond the success model of saying, just pay us a fee for the introduction of a candidate, but actually we'll run the whole recruiting function in the organisation, and we're paid for provision of service, or in the Recruit Loop case, kind of the hours spent on it, the days spent on it. It's looking at all the different models to go back and say, you know what, we could do more about because of the intelligence we have, we could do more about the employer branding, we could do more about client advice, we could help our clients not to change the way in which they market themselves, but to change the ways in which they operate if they want to hire the best talent. So there's all of this that could be done to counter that, to say, well, maybe the agency could manage the employer brand. Maybe the agency could build the talent pool. Straight away, if I came to you, you specialised, let's say, in PHP developers for the last 8 years, as a one-off exercise, you could go and talk to your candidates about who wants to attach themselves to our company and become part of our talent pool, which is free then for the company to communicate with them and hire as many or as few as they want. But we source the talent pool, not to hire. What you need to do is change your mindset about what it is you're doing.
So this is linked also to your idea, I think. You've obviously mentioned the very controversial idea of doing some of these things for free, but
Give it away. Give it away.
yeah, you mentioned the other week, I think, about the idea of companies paying recruiters for the life of the employee from recruitment until they leave,
Yeah.
so they're more invested in the total experience, so to speak.
Yeah, I think if we
Am I
look at
right?
the fee model and the way we, if we look at the fee model and the way in which recruiters are rewarded, it's pretty crazy, really, in that all of the reward is on the front end over the introduction of someone and the and kind of usually a 3-month rebate in which you get. If somebody stays in the company 2 weeks, you're probably giving back no more than 50%, of the fee that's been paid out. And I think that's pretty crazy because you're rewarding people for doing introductions. You're not rewarding people for getting the right employees. Now, whenever I've had this conversation, lots of people will say, "Oh yes, but we love our clients and we would only ever place people we think we're going to stay and all the rest of it." I think that's very true. But if we look at it and say, if we want to be a true partner with you, if we want to be a real partner, we're going to share some of the risk. We're going to take some of the burden and we're going to share some of the risk. And not only are we going to share some of the risk, in turn, we will share in greater rewards than we would have done as a fee. So, let's just say your average fee is 20%, and you're charging people 20%. Instead of charging 20% up front, you charged 5% forever. So whatever salary, almost like a sports coach, albeit charging the clients at the moment, because that's where the model currently is saying, well, we will earn every year a percentage of the salary of the person we place in the company, and we will share in the long-term success of the candidates rather than the short-term success for short-term gain. And I think once you start thinking like that and how you would invest in that relationship with both the candidate and the company on a long-term basis, because that's where your financial rewards were, it's pretty simple to see that the way in which we do business would change and it would be better for everyone.
I'm still on mute. That's interesting. Thanks, Bill. I've got a question that's coming in. First, Pete, I want to know whether you had any feedback on that. Do you think there's appetite for some of these ideas that Bill's been mentioning around culture and employer branding and so forth?
I do, and I think the last piece around the length of time over which payments are made is an interesting one, and I think it opens up a huge area of potential that clients would actually, I feel they would really like and jump on board with. But I think going back to the whole candidate versus applicant argument, I think it's something we've always done. I don't think that's actually a big change. I think what has changed there is the technology now that we have available on social media has made the scale at which we can do it far, far greater than we've ever had previously. And it's no longer looking at 100 or 200 people that you know in this little community. You're looking at potentially thousands of these people that you can deal with in real time. And I think the other thing that technology's enabled is the fact that the validation of your skills and experience and knowledge as a professional within that sector is very easy now to validate you as a leader within that market space.
Yeah, or not.
Or not, yes, exactly. And that's the scary thing for a lot of consultants now, is they're being put on the line all the time, 24 hours a day, and you can't hide away from it anymore. You've got to have a blog. Excuse me. You've got to have a blog. You've got to be active on social media. You've got to be holding events. You've got to be doing all these things. And I think to build that and maintain and sustain that is a daunting prospect for the consultants that we have around here anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm seeing is if we look at the Netherlands over to Amsterdam as a different type of model, there's some clear trends. Number one is nearly or at least 50% of the recruiters are independent recruiters. It's one person because the cost of entry is quite low. You can now establish a personal brand and generate business and compete against marketing departments. Now, the interesting thing that's happening with those independent recruiters is that they're very, very agile over what they do. So they will typically go in-house and work in-house for about 5-6 months for the larger companies. I mentioned Rob Van Elberg earlier. He's got a recruitment business, but he's in-house at ING, driving all their technical recruiting. Jacco Valkenburg, Gordon Lokenberg, who's a sourcing specialist, he's at TomTom at the moment. So sometimes they're in-house, sometimes they're out-house and working. What you could use a different term sometimes, but sometimes they're out-house and working for and generating fees for themselves, you know, from the back rooms and the bedrooms in the Netherlands. And I think it's that agile approach. I think the other thing that's happening, which is quite difficult for recruitment companies, but something you're just going to have to get over, is that the personal brand of the recruiter will be bigger than the brand of the business. Because people attach with individuals, and your business brand will be a collection of the personal brands in it, rather than the personal brand being totally tied into the business brand in the middle. I think that's quite a difficult thing for recruitment businesses to get their head around, but it's equally the way we should be thinking. Louis, did you say you had a question?
I did. It's back to data, if that's all right.
Yeah.
It's Liam Fitzgerald. He asks, what would be the easiest way to start on the path towards utilising the data we've all got?
Think of the questions you want to ask. Right, I think that's the starting point. Whenever we talk about big data, we all kind of, I think people are yawning a bit now because we're hearing so much about it and not getting a lot of explanation as to what it is. So I'm going to throw my 2 pence to try and explain a little bit about what big data is. The concept of big data. The concept of
is it small? Are we talking about big or small? Are we just talking about the data in the databases?
No,
are we even utilising that?
No. I'll come on to that in a second. I think okay. What we've got is when we're talking about big data, it's creating, it's enabling somebody doing their job to make actions driven, to take actions and decisions driven on evidence without being either a data expert or an IT expert. Right? That's really what we're working towards. So as a recruiter, I need to be able to ask questions of the data to get the right answers. Delivered big data shrunk into little data to say, this is the meaningful bit. This is the answer that I want. So I think the starting point is just sitting down and saying, what do we want to know? What would be really useful? What could we make decisions about? What would help us to make decisions? What are the decisions we make now at a much slower pace that we would quite like to automate, and could we get it from the data we've already got? So if I was running a recruitment business now, I think I'd start by doing quite a simple data exercise to produce a list to divide based on the candidate information I have, an allocation of things like skills, programs, levels of experience, sectors. What can I find out about potential employers in the area, and start with that, and then just look at a CV and say, if I looked at this CV combined with 1 million other CVs which are in my database, what could it tell me? So go back and say, right, what are the answers you want, and first of all, can you get it out of your database?
Pete, do you have any comments on that?
I think you're right, Bill. It's definitely one part of it, and the more you investigate as to what you think you could be able to utilise, the more you start analysing the data that you've actually got, the more you'll find you can do more with all this data that you have. You find trends and various things will be highlighted to you as you start manipulating the data and sifting through it. You'll start seeing a lot more different ways in which it can be utilized and applied to different situations. So I think it is a balance of both, where you need to get started, you need to start extracting data from what you've got, and the process of doing that will identify potential opportunities. But obviously sitting down with the basic elements of the data, you've got jobs, clients and candidate information, and seeing what the trends are and what the various elements are that you can actually take out of that and manipulate that into some form of knowledge that's going to be of benefit to either candidates or clients again.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Pete. Peter, I think it is that sitting down and saying, right, before we start, let's have a look at what we've got and what's here, and let's have a look at what we've accumulated for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and then let's start figuring out what would be useful, what would people want, what would people be willing to pay for. You know, I think one of the good things to do right now, if I was running a recruitment business, was I'd get 9 or 10 of our better clients who we have stronger relationships with in a room and say, this is a completely white board. We're not trying to sell you anything. Tell us what would be useful to you, and tell us which parts of that you would pay for, which parts of that you would strengthen our relationship if we could provide you with this information. And I think you'll be quite surprised about what they'd come up with if we just said, let's just completely forget. The hardest thing when you're talking about change is forgetting what you do now.
Yeah.
Because you usually try and base what you're going to do next on what you do now. How are we going to make it a little bit better? How are we going to change that? Or we couldn't possibly do that because companies don't do that. Actually getting people together, get your head together and say, right, let's talk about what would be useful. Let's talk to the recruiters in the business and say, what would be useful to you? What would help you make better decisions about anything, whether it's placements, candidates? Can we get that from the data that we've got if we interrogate it in the right way? So that's a shorthand version, but I hope that answers that, Liam.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill. I just had a tweet, really enjoying the Google Plus Hangout. A lot of food for thought, so that's nice to hear. I think we're nearing the end of this, chaps. Was there anything more in the paper you wanted to raise, Bill?
I think just to read it, and all I know is people to have is an open mind at the start. You know, just forget what you do now, think what's possible. I remember when I moved from having a training business into doing what I do now, the first thing I did was I gave away everything I used to everything I used to get paid for. I gave away for free, and as a result, people paid me for different things. I think we're at that point in the recruitment market. I think it's incredibly exciting. It might mean we need to hire different recruiters. It might mean we need to think about business in a different way. I think the right time to think about change is now. The market is shrinking, but people are doing better. I recently saw someone speaking at different conferences said, you know what, the time to change things is when things are going better. Because then you're doing things because they're the right things to do, rather than because you haven't got any choices. You're not getting pushed in any corners. I think if we look at that and take that attitude and say, right, this is the time to, and you don't have to do it all overnight. You don't have to change everything overnight, but maybe you could change one division or one recruiter or one desk or one way of working. So let's try something new. Let's go and interrogate it. Let's go and find out what data we've got. Let's start thinking about, well, if we gave away our recruitment service, what could we charge for?
It's
not as crazy as it sounds.
No, I mean, I've had a lot of positive feedback from people emailing after reading the paper, and a lot of recruiters are testing out new ideas with a new office, for instance.
Yeah.
Or just doing little bits with the understanding, you know, just working towards and testing new things, seeing what works in their market, and so forth.
Yeah, I think Peter would agree with me on that. You know, I am getting a sense that people are willing to think about change. whereas perhaps 12 months ago, I really didn't get that. It was very much like Nero standing there and saying, it's not going to happen, things will always be the same.
I would agree with it. I'd also say when you do read the white paper that keep in mind what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years throughout the various different industries. Look at companies like Kodak, what's happened in the music industry, the publishing industry, all the rest of it. It can happen very, very quickly. It's a massive sea change that you're right, Bill, you then end up in a firefighting mode, and you're trying to do things for the wrong reasons.
Thank you. I really appreciate you both coming on, and Pete especially. I know you're busy and giving some feedback to this. And
Pete especially, yeah, don't worry about me.
Well, Bill, we pay you, so
well, total transparency.
So generous for coming on, Bill, and speaking to me as well. But no, really, thank you very much. And you can get the paper on the colleague website. We're actually working with Bill in the next next year or 2 years on looking at some technology that might help facilitate or encourage some of these ideas. I think that's the right way of putting it, Bill. And
supporting change.
Yeah, so
supporting change in business.
Yeah, should be some exciting stuff. We work with Bill on technology and marketing and white papers and content and so forth. So there's a few other white papers, one early in the year on transaction to relationship recruiting, which sort of was the preemptor to this one, I suppose, Bill, and that's
but still the most popular one, which
and there's
still the most popular one, which sums up the market, the LinkedIn one. Yeah,
there's a LinkedIn one as well worth looking at, although we're going to release another one, updated version of that at some point in the next few months. And there's another one colleague released recently on culture and employer branding in recruitment agencies and how they're doing the best to attract the best talent. And we spoke to a few owners and directors of agencies to see what they were doing and put it all together. And that's actually a good example of collaboration. Owners and directors are willing to share ideas now and talk to one another, which is, I think,
Louis, can I just say something on that point that I think is important? The key words that we should be thinking about in business now is collaboration, referral, and reference, and influence, and the concepts that we've always talked about for a long time of command and control, candidate control, applicant control, are dead concepts.
On that point, I think that's a good point to end. So thank you very much both again. Have a great weekend. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Go back and put...
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, go back if you have any feedback, let me know.
Go back and put your phones in the cupboard and stop ringing people and start getting used to the digital revolution. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Bill. Take care.
Cheers.